Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books here in Wisteria Cottage, otherwise called Wisteria College, because there's so much spiritual learning going on here lately. We're here halfway in between Folkestone and Canterbury at Hode Farm. Very lovely place. And I've got a room full of spiritual seekers, not seekers, spiritualists, sadhanas, sadhakas here. And all right. Welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace. We hope you're enjoying the reading of Srila Prabhupada's books straight through the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We've reached the 28th chapter, the instructions of Kapila Dev on the execution of devotional service. But before we do, we're going to read what has now become a famous prayer by Srila Sanatana Goswami, glorifying the Srimad-Bhagavatam from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava. It's called Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram. I've been talking all day today without stop. So if my voice is a little weak tonight, that's why. Hare Krishna, you can forgive that, please. Okay. Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarvalokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadagamad Bhagya Mad Anandanamostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atini chochatakara hanamun chagadachinmam Premna Rit Kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Is it no wonder that the devotees that are watching every night are becoming enlightened, considering what they're hearing? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we're going to finish up this chapter pretty quickly. Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service. Text 41. The Supreme Personality of Godhead who is known as Param Brahma, is the seer. He is different from the Jiva soul, or individual living entity, who is combined with the senses, the five elements, and consciousness. Purport. The clear conception of the complete whole is given herewith. The living entity is different from the material elements, and the supreme living entity, the personality of Godhead, who is the creator of the material elements, is also different from the individual living entity. This philosophy is propounded by Lord Chaitanya as Achintya Bedha Beda Tattva. Everything is simultaneously one with and different from everything else. The cosmic manifestation created by the Supreme Lord by his material energy is also simultaneously different and non-different from him. The material energy is non-different from the Supreme Lord, but at the same time, because that energy is acting in a different way, it is different from him. Similarly, the individual living entity is one with and different from the Supreme Lord. This simultaneously one and different philosophy is the perfect conclusion of the Bhagavata school, as confirmed here by Kapila Dev. Living entities are compared to the sparks of a fire. As stated in the previous verse, fire, flame, smoke, and firewood are combined together. Here the living entity, the material elements, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are combined together. The exact position of the living entities is just like that of the sparks of a fire. They are part and parcel. The material energy is compared to the smoke. The fire is also part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. In the Vishnu Purana it is said that whatever we can see or experience, either in the material or spiritual world, is an expansion of the different energies of the Supreme Lord. As fire distributes its light and heat from one place, the Supreme Personality of Godhead distributes his different energies all over his creation. The four principles of the Vaishnava philosophic doctrine are Shuddha-dvaita, purified oneness, Dvaita, Advaita, simultaneous oneness and difference, Vishishta Advaita, and Dvaita. All four principles of Vaishnava philosophy are based on this thesis of Srimad-Bhagavatam explained in these two verses. Text 42. A yogi should see the same soul in all manifestations, for all that exists is a manifestation of different energies of the Supreme. In this way, the devotee should see all living entities without distinction. That is realization of the Supreme Soul. Purport. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, not only does the Supreme Soul enter each and every universe, but he enters even the atoms. The Supreme Soul is present everywhere in the dormant stage, and when one can see the presence of the Supreme Soul everywhere, one is liberated from material designations. The word sarva bhuteshu is to be understood as follows. There are four different divisions of species, living entities which sprout from the earth, living entities born from fermentation or germination, living entities which come from eggs, and living entities which come from the embryo. These four divisions of living entities are expanded in 8,400,000 species of life. A person who is freed from material designations can see the same quality of spirit present everywhere or in every manifested living entity. Less intelligent men think that plants and grass grow out of the earth automatically, but one who is actually intelligent has realized the self, can see that this growth is not automatic. The cause is the soul, and the forms come out in material bodies under different conditions. By fermentation in the laboratory, many germs are born, but this is due to the presence of the soul. The material scientist thinks that eggs are lifeless, but that is not a fact. From Vedic scripture we can understand that living entities in different forms are generated under different conditions. Birds evolve from eggs, and beasts and human beings are born from the embryo. The perfect vision of a yogi or devotee is that he sees the presence of the living entity everywhere. Text 43. As fire is exhibited in different forms of wood, so under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit manifests itself in different bodies. Purport. It is to be understood that the body is designated. Prakriti is an interaction by the three modes of material nature, and according to these modes, someone has a small body, and someone has a very large body. For example, the fire in a big piece of wood appears very big, and in a stick, the fire appears small. Actually, the quality of fire is the same everywhere, but the manifestation of material nature is such that according to the fuel, the fire appears bigger and smaller. Similarly, the soul in the universal body, although of the same quality, is different from the soul in the smaller body. The small particles of soul are just like sparks of the larger soul. The greatest soul is the super soul, but the super soul is quantitatively different from the small soul. The super soul is described in the Vedic literature as the supplier of all necessities of the smaller soul, nityanam. One who understands this distinction between the super soul and the individual soul is above lamentation and is in a peaceful position. When the smaller soul thinks himself quantitatively as big as the larger soul, he is under the spell of Maya. For that is not his constitutional position. Nor can one become the greater soul simply by mental speculation. The smallness or greatness of different souls is described in the Varaha Purana as Shwangsa Vibhinangsha. The Shwangsa soul is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Vibhinangsha souls, or small particles, are eternally small particles, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivangsha Jivaloke Jivabhutak Sanatanaham. The small living entities are eternally part and parcel, and therefore it is not possible for them to be quantitatively as great as the super soul. Text 44. Thus, the yogi can be in the self-realized position after conquering the insurmountable spell of Maya, who presents herself as both the cause and effect of this material manifestation, and is therefore very difficult to understand. Purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that the spell of Maya, which covers the knowledge of the living entity, is insurmountable. However, one who surrenders unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can conquer this seemingly insurmountable spell of Maya. Here also it is stated that the Daivi Prakriti, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord, is durvi bhavya, very difficult to understand and very difficult to conquer. One must, however, conquer this insurmountable spell of Maya. And this is possible by the grace of the Lord when God reveals himself to the surrendered soul. It is also stated here, Sarupena vyatishtate. Sarupa means that one has to know that he is not the Supreme Soul, but rather part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. That is self-realization. To think falsely that one is the Supreme Soul and that one is all-pervading is not Sarupa. This is not realization of its actual position. The real position is that one is part and parcel. It is recommended here that one remain in that position of actual self-realization. In Bhagavad Gita, this understanding is defined as Brahman realization. After Brahman realization, one can engage in the activities of Brahman. As long as one is not self-realized, he engages in activities based on false identification with the body. When one is situated in his real self, then the activities of Brahman realization begin. The Mayavadi philosophers say that after Brahman realization, all activities stop. But that is not actually so. If the soul is so active in its abnormal condition, existing under the covering of matter, how can one deny its activity when free? An example may be cited here. If a man is in a diseased condition, if a man in a diseased condition is very active, how could one imagine that when he is free from the disease, he will be inactive? Naturally, the Bhagavad Gita. Wait. Naturally, the conclusion is that when one is free from all disease, his activities are pure. It may be said that the activities of Brahman realization are different from those of conditional life, but that does not stop activity. This is indicated in Bhagavad Gita 1854. After one realizes oneself to be Brahman, devotional service begins. Mad bhaktim labhate param. After Brahman realization, one can engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, devotional service of the Lord is activity in Brahman realization. For those who engage in devotional service, there is no spell of Maya, and their situation is all perfect. The duty of the living entity as a part and parcel of the whole is to render devotional service to the whole. That is the ultimate perfection of life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 28th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kapila's Instruction on the Execution of Devotional Service. Jai. Shri Kapila Dev Ki Jai. The Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila Dev. 29. Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. Text 1 and 2. Be sure to keep your questions now, or your reflections, because this is very deep, what we just read. Very deep. So make mental notes or notes on your phone or whatever, however way you can make notes. Devahuti inquired, "My dear Lord, You have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit according to the Sankhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Purport. In this 29th chapter, the glories of devotional service are elaborately explained. And the influence of time on the conditioned soul is also described. The purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. In the previous chapter, material nature, the Spirit and the Supreme Lord, or Supersoul, are analytically studied. And in this chapter, the principles of Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service, the execution of activities in the eternal relationship between the living entities and the personality of Godhead, are explained. Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the basic principle of all systems of philosophy. All philosophy which does not aim for devotional service to the Lord is considered merely mental speculation. But of course, Bhakti Yoga with no philosophical basis is more or less sentiment. There are two classes of men. Some consider themselves intellectually advanced and simply speculate and meditate, and others are sentimental and have no philosophical basis for their propositions. Neither of these can achieve the highest goal of life, or if they do, it will take them many, many years. Vedic literature therefore suggests that there are three elements, namely the Supreme Lord, the living entity, and their eternal relationship. And the goal of life is to follow the principles of bhakti, or devotional service, and ultimately attain to the planet of the Supreme Lord in full devotion and love as an eternal servitor of the Lord. Sankhya philosophy is the analytical study of all existence. One has to understand everything by examining its nature and characteristics. This is called acquirement of knowledge. But one should not simply acquire knowledge without reaching the goal of life, or the basic principle for acquiring knowledge, Bhakti Yoga. If we give up Bhakti Yoga and simply busy ourselves in the analytical study of the nature of things as they are, then the result will be practically nil. It is stated in the Bhagavatam that such engagement is something like husking a paddy. There is no use beating the husk if the grain has already been removed. By the scientific study of material nature, the living entity and the supersoul, one has to understand the basic principle of devotional service to the Lord. Text 3. Devahuti continued, My dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for people in general, the continual process of birth and death. For by hearing such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. Purport. In this verse, the word sangsriti is very important. Shriyak Sriti means the prosperous path of advancement towards the personality of Godhead, and sangsriti means the continued journey on the path of birth and death towards the darkest region of material existence. People who have no knowledge of this material world, God, and their actual intimate relationship with Him are actually going to the darkest region of material existence in the name of progress in the material advancement of civilization. To enter the darkest region of material existence means to enter into a species of life other than the human species. Ignorant men do not know that after this life they are completely under the grip of a material nature and will be offered a life which may not be very congenial. How can a living entity get different kinds of bodies will be explained in the next chapter. This continual change of bodies in birth and death is called samsara. Devahuti requests her glorious son, Kapila Muni, to explain about this continued journey, to impress upon the conditioned souls that they are undergoing a path of degradation by not understanding the path of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. Text 4. Please also describe eternal time, which is a representation of your form, and by whose influence people in general engage in the performance of pious activities. Purport. However ignorant one may be regarding the path of good fortune and the path down to the darkest region of ignorance, everyone is aware of the influence of eternal time, which devours all the effects of our material activities. The body is born at a certain time, and immediately the influence of time acts upon it. From the date of the birth of the body, the influence of death is also acting. The advancement of age entails the influence of time on the body. If a man is 30 or 50 years old, then the influence of time has already devoured 30 or 50 years of the duration of his life. Some people may think that we're pessimistic. And Srila Prabhupada answered the question very simply, yes, we are. Because if you're not pessimistic about material existence and material nature, then you can't possibly be optimistic about spiritual life and the goal of life, the spiritual world. Everyone is conscious of the last stage of life, when he will meet the cruel hands of death. But some consider their age and circumstances, concern themselves with the influence of time, and thus engage in pious activities so that in the future they will not be put into a low family or an animal species. Generally, people are attached to sense enjoyment, and so aspire for life on the heavenly planets. Therefore, they engage themselves in charitable or other pious activities. But actually, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, one cannot get relief from the chain of birth and death, even if he goes to the highest planet, Brahmaloka, because the influence of time is present everywhere within this material world. In the spiritual world, however, the time factor has no influence. Text 5. My dear Lord, you are just like the sun, for you illuminate the darkness of the conditioned life of the living entities. Because their eyes of knowledge are not open, they are sleeping eternally in that darkness without your shelter. And therefore they are falsely engaged by the actions and reactions of their material activities, and they appear to be fatigued. Purport. It appears that Srimati Devahuti, the glorious mother of Lord Kapila Deva, is very compassionate for the regrettable condition of people in general, who, not knowing the goal of life, are sleeping in the darkness of illusion. It is the general feeling of the Vaishnava, or devotee of the Lord, that he should awaken them. Similarly, Devahuti is requesting her glorious Son to illuminate the lives of the conditioned souls so that their most regrettable conditional life may be ended. The Lord is described herein as Yoga Bhaskara, the son of the system of all yoga. Devahuti has already requested her glorious Son to describe Bhakti Yoga, and the Lord has described Bhakti Yoga as the ultimate yoga system. Bhakti Yoga is the sun-like illumination for delivering the conditioned souls, whose general condition is described here. They have no eyes to see their own interests. They do not know that the goal of life is not to increase the material necessities of existence, because the body will not exist more than a few years. The living beings are eternal, and they have their eternal need. If one engages only in caring for the necessities of the body, not caring for the eternal necessities of life, then he is part of a civilization whose advancement puts the living entities into the darkest region of ignorance.
Spoken concisely is true eloquence.
Yes. Sleeping in that darkest region, one does not get any refreshment, but rather gradually becomes fatigued. He invents many processes to adjust this fatigued condition, but he fails and thus remains confused. The only path for mitigating his fatigue in the struggle for existence is the path of devotional service, or the path of Krishna consciousness. Text 6. Sri Maitreya said, O best among the Kurus, the great sage Kapila, moved by great compassion and pleased by the words of his glorious mother, spoke as follows. Purport. Lord Kapila was very satisfied by the request of his glorious mother, because she was thinking not only in terms of her personal salvation, but in terms of all the fallen, conditioned souls. The Lord is always compassionate towards the fallen souls of this material world, and therefore he comes himself or sends his confidential servants to deliver them. Since he is perpetually compassionate towards them, if some of his devotees also become compassionate towards them, he is very pleased with the devotees. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that persons who are trying to elevate the condition of the fallen souls by preaching the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, namely full surrender under the personality of Godhead, are very dear to him. Thus, when the Lord saw that his beloved mother was very compassionate toward the fallen souls, he was pleased, and he also became compassionate towards her. Text 7. Lord Kapila, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, replied, O noble lady, there are multifarious paths of devotional service in terms of the different qualities of the executor. Purport. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is one, because in pure devotional service there is no demand from the devotee to be fulfilled by the Lord. But generally, people take to devotional service with a purpose. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, people who are not purified take to devotional service with 4 purposes. A person who is distressed because of material conditions becomes a devotee of the Lord and approaches the Lord for mitigation of his distress. A person in need of money approaches the Lord to ask for some improvement in his monetary condition. Others who are not in distress or in need of monetary assistance, but are seeking knowledge in order to understand the absolute truth, also take to devotional service, and they inquire into the nature of the Supreme Lord. This is very nicely described in Bhagavad Gita 7:16. Actually, the path of devotional service is one without a second. But according to the devotee's condition, devotional service appears in multifarious varieties, as will be nicely explained in the following verses. Text 8. Devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry, and who is a separatist, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. Purport. It has already been stated in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, that the highest, most glorious religion is the attainment of causeless, unmotivated devotional service. In pure devotional service, the only motive should be to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is not actually a motive, that is the pure condition of the living entity. In the conditioned stage, when one engages in devotional service, he should follow the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master in full surrender. The spiritual master is the manifested representation of the Supreme Lord because he receives and presents the instructions of the Lord as they are by disciplic succession. It is described in Bhagavad Gita that the teachings therein should be received by disciplic succession, otherwise there is adulteration. To act under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master with a motive to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pure devotional service. But if one has motive, if one has a motive for personal sense gratification, his devotional service is manifested differently. Such a man may be violent, proud, envious, and angry, and his interests are separate from the Lord's. One who approaches the Supreme Lord to render devotional service, but who is proud of his personality, envious of others, or vengeful, is in the mode of anger. He thinks that he is the best devotee. Devotional service executed in this way is not pure. It is mixed and is of the lowest grade, tamasa. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur advises that a Vaishnava who is not of good character should be avoided. A Vaishnava is one who has taken the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the ultimate goal of life. But if one is not pure and still has motives, then he is not a Vaishnava of the first order of good character. One may offer him his respects to such a Vaishnava because he has accepted the Supreme Lord as the ultimate goal of life, but one should not keep company with a Vaishnava who is in the mode of ignorance. Text 9. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with the motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. Purport. The word separatist must be understood carefully. The Sanskrit words in this connection are binadrik and pritag bhava. A separatist is one who sees his interest as separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Mixed devotees, or devotees in the modes of passion and ignorance, think that the interest of the Supreme Lord is supplying the orders of the devotees. The interest of such devotees is to draw from the Lord as much as possible for their sense gratification. This is the separatist mentality. Actually, pure devotion is explained in the previous chapter. The mind of the Supreme Lord and the mind of the devotee should be dovetailed. A devotee should not wish anything, but to execute the desire of the Supreme. That is oneness. When the devotee has an interest or will different from the interest of the Supreme Lord, his mentality is that of a separatist. When the so-called devotee desires material enjoyment without reference to the interest of the Supreme Lord, or he wants to become famous or opulent by utilizing the mercy or grace of the Supreme Lord, he is in mode of passion. Mayavadis, however, interpret this word separatist in a different way. They say that while worshiping the Lord, one should think of himself one with the Supreme Lord. This is another adulterated form of devotion within the modes of material nature. The conception that the living entity is one with the Supreme is in the mode of ignorance. Oneness is actually based on oneness of interest. A pure devotee has no interest but to act on behalf of the Supreme Lord. When one has even a tinge of personal interest, his devotion is mixed with the three modes of material nature. Text 10. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrieties of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. Purport. The Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, along with the Brahmacharis, Grahastas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis, are the members of the 8 divisions of Varnas and Ashramas, and they have their respective duties to perform for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When such activities are performed, and the results are offered to the Supreme Lord, they are called karmarpanam, duties performed for the satisfaction of the Lord. If there is any inebriety or fault, it is atoned for by this offering process. But if this offering process is in the mode of goodness rather than in pure devotion, then the interest is different. The 4 ashramas and the 4 varnas act for some benefit in accordance with their personal interests. Therefore, such activities are in the mode of goodness. They cannot be counted in the category of pure devotion. Pure devotional service is described by Rupa Goswami, is free from all material desires. Anyabhilashita shunyam. There can be no excuse for personal or material interest. Devotional activities should be transcendental to fruitive activities and empiric philosophical speculation. Pure devotional service is transcendental to empiric philosophical speculation. Pure devotional service is transcendental to all material qualities. Devotional service in the modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness can be divided into 81 categories. There are different devotional activities, such as hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, offering prayer, rendering service, and surrendering everything. And each of them can be divided into 3 qualitative categories. There is hearing in the mode of passion, in the mode of ignorance, and in the mode of goodness. Oh. Similarly, there is chanting in the mode of ignorance, passion, and goodness, etc. 3 multiplied by 9 equals 27, and when again multiplied by 3 it becomes 81. One has to transcend all such mixed materialistic devotional service in order to reach the standard of pure devotional service, as explained in the next verses. Text 11 and 12. The manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. Purport. The basic principle of this unadulterated, pure devotional service is love of Godhead. Madguna Shruti means, just after hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These qualities are called nirguna. The Supreme Lord is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature. Therefore, he is attractive to the pure devotee. There is no need to practice meditation to attain such attraction. The pure devotee is already in the transcendental stage, and the affinity between him and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is natural and is compared to the Ganges water flowing towards the sea. The flow of the Ganges water cannot be stopped by any condition. Similarly, a pure devotee's attraction for the transcendental name, form, and pastimes of the Supreme Godhead cannot be stopped by any material condition. The word avicchina, without interruptions, is very important in this connection. No material condition can stop the flow of devotional service of a pure devotee. The word ahaituki means without reason. A pure devotee does not render loving service to the personality of Godhead for any cause or for any benefit, material or spiritual. This is the first symptom of unalloyed devotion. Anyabhilashita shunyam. He has no desire to fulfill by rendering devotional service. Such devotional service is meant for the Purushottam, the Supreme Personality, and not for anyone else. Sometimes pseudo-devotees show devotion to many demigods, thinking the forms of the demigods to be the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead's form. It is specifically mentioned herein, however, that bhakti, devotional service, is meant only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, Vishnu, or Krishna, not for anyone else. Avyavihita means without cessation. A pure devotee must engage in the service of the Lord 24 hours a day, without cessation. His life is so molded that at every minute and every second he engages in some sort of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another meaning of the word avyavahita is that the interest of the devotee and the interest of the Supreme Lord are on the same level. The devotee has no interest but to fulfill the transcendental desire of the Supreme Lord. Such spontaneous service under the Supreme Lord is transcendental and is never contaminated by the material modes of nature. These are the symptoms of pure devotional service, which is free from all contaminations of material nature. Text 13. Salokya sarshti samipya sarupyai katvamapyutam diyamanam chigrinanti vinamat sevanam janaha. A pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation. Salokya, sarshti, samipya, sarupya, or ekatva, even though they are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Lord Chaitanya teaches us how to execute pure devotional service out of spontaneous love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Shikshashtaka, he prays to the Lord, O Lord, I do not wish to gain from you any wealth, nor do I wish to have a beautiful wife, nor do I wish to have many followers. All I want from you is that in life after life I may remain a pure devotee at your lotus feet. There is a similarity between the prayers of Lord Chaitanya and the statements of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya prays in life after life, indicating that the devotee does not even desire the cessation of birth and death. The yogis and empiric philosophers desire cessation of the process of birth and death. But a devotee is satisfied to remain even in this material world and execute devotional service. It is clearly stated herein that a pure devotee does not desire ekatva, oneness with the Supreme Lord, as desired by the impersonalists, the mental speculators, and the meditators. To become one with the Supreme Lord is beyond the dream of a pure devotee. Sometimes he may accept promotion to the Vaikuntha planets to serve the Lord there, but he will never accept merging into the Brahman effulgence, which he considers worse than hellish. Such ekatva, or merging into the effulgence of the Supreme Lord, is called kaivalya, but the happiness derived from kaivalya is considered by the pure devotee to be hellish. The devotee is so fond of rendering service to the Supreme Lord that the 5 kinds of liberation are not important to him. If one is engaged in pure devotional loving service to the Lord, pure transcendental loving service to the Lord, it is understood that he has already achieved the 5 kinds of liberation. When a devotee is promoted to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, he receives 4 kinds of facilities. One of these is Salokya, living on the same planet as the Supreme Personality. The Supreme Person, in his different plenary expansions, lives on innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and the chief planet is Krishna Loka. Just as within the material universe, the chief planet is the sun, in the spiritual world, the chief planet is Krishna Loka. From Krishna Loka, the bodily effulgence of Lord Krishna is distributed not only to the spiritual world, but to the material world as well. It is covered by matter, however, in the material world. In the spiritual world, there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and on each one, the Lord is the predominating deity. A devotee can be promoted to one such Vaikuntha planet to live with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Sharsti liberation, the opulence of the devotee is equal to the opulence of the Supreme Lord. Samipya means to be a personal associate of the Supreme Lord. In Sarupya liberation, the bodily features of the devotee are exactly like those of the Supreme Person, but for 2 or 3 symptoms found exclusively on the transcendental body of the Lord. Srivatsa, for example, the hair on the chest of the Lord, particularly distinguishes him from his devotees. A pure devotee does not accept these 5 kinds of spiritual existence, even if they are offered, and he certainly does not hanker after material benefits, which are all insignificant in comparison with spiritual benefits. When Prahlad Maharaj was offered some material benefit, he stated, "My Lord, I have seen that my father achieved all kinds of material benefits, and even the demigods were afraid of his opulence. But still, in a second, you have finished his life and all his material prosperity." For a devotee, there is no question of desiring any material or spiritual prosperity. He simply aspires to serve the Lord. That is his highest happiness. Text 14. By attaining the highest platform of devotional service, as I have explained, one can overcome the influence of the three modes of material nature and be situated in the transcendental stage, as is the Lord. Purport. Sripad Shankaracharya, who is supposed to be the leader of the impersonalist school of philosophers, has admitted in the beginning of his comments on Bhagavad Gita that Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is beyond the material creation. Except for him, everything within the material creation, except for him, everything is within the material creation. It is also confirmed in the Vedic literature that before the creation there was only Narayana. Neither Lord Brahma nor Lord Shiva existed. Only Narayana, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, or Krishna, is always in the transcendental position, beyond the influence of material creation. The material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance cannot affect the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore he is called Nirguna, free from all tinges of material qualities. Here the same fact is confirmed by Lord Kapila. One who is situated in pure devotional service is transcendentally situated, as is the Lord. Just as the Lord is unaffected by the influence of the material modes, so too are his pure devotees. One who is not affected by the three modes of material nature is called a liberated soul, or Brahmaputa soul. Brahmabhuta Prasanatma is the stage of liberation. Aham Brahmasmi, I am not this body. This is applicable only to the person who constantly engages in the devotional service of Krishna and is thus in the transcendental stage. He is above the influence of the three modes of material nature. It is the misconception of the impersonalists that one can worship any imaginary form of a Lord or Brahman, and at the end merge in the Brahman effulgence. Of course, to merge into the bodily effulgence, Brahman, of the Supreme Lord, is also liberation, as explained in the previous verse. Ekatva is also liberation, but that sort of liberation is never accepted by any devotee, for qualitative oneness is immediately attained as soon as one is situated in devotional service. For a devotee, that qualitative equality, which is the result of impersonal liberation, is already attained. He does not have to try for it separately. It is clearly stated here that simply by pure devotional service one becomes qualitatively as good as the Lord himself. So we'll stop here. Hare Krishna, that's an hour of reading. So here we are, back in Wisteria College, waiting for some reflections to pour forth from the hearts of our exalted devotees, either here in our company or out there in cyberspace. Hare Krishna. The devotees are stunned. Yes, Radhika.
I like the point of being a separatist, which is applicable for the devotional service in mode of passion and in ignorance. That one has an interest which is separate from the Lord, and that's immediately we have that in our hearts. Then our devotional service becomes mixed with the three modes of material nature. So it's a constant struggle for the sadhaka not to let this interfere with our performance of devotional service. Because even I was thinking, like this marathon, I was just focusing on doing books, without material consideration of price, cost, calculations. And I did. But then when I was making the calculations, I was thinking, oh my God, maybe even though I achieved to do the goal, which was to please Prabhupada, I could see a pinch of my own, selfishness there that was not completely satisfied. Devotional service brings, Sankirtan brings these things up like anything else I find. I mean, devotional service does brings it up, but particularly book distribution.
Well, what I heard was that unless we're doing what we're doing exclusively for the pleasure of the Lord, then automatically the modes of nature will influence us. Anyone in the material world. So the only solution is to do our service exclusively for the service of the Lord. And then those results that you were talking about, they will come by the grace of the Lord. But we're thinking while we're influenced by the modes of nature, which you're talking about a subtlety, because, when Prabhupada was explaining mixed devotional service, he was talking about, anger, resentment, envy, greed, and all these things, so in the mode of goodness, devotional service also keeps us separate from Krishna, because then there is I would say that your devotional service is more in goodness than passion and ignorance, because you were trying to satisfy Krishna, as you said, but at the same time there was something for yourself. So that's not so bad. But the point is that, to actually transcend the modes, we have to do our service for Krishna's pleasure and leave the results to Him. It doesn't mean that we stop acting. It doesn't mean that we just, go into the forest or just, sit in a corner and, be afraid to come out of the corner to try to do something. A person in transcendental consciousness may appear to be very passionate in terms of, the intensity of the action or the attempt to satisfy Krishna. So I think Kapila is what he's saying is that we should just, give up the ambition, to satisfy ourselves and let Krishna arrange things for us. Yeah. Including our material, situations. Because if we do that, whatever we do need will be provided according to our karmic, necessity, or according to our providence, what we deserve. But it will be done without our fretting over it and our worrying about it and our, intensely endeavoring to do it in a certain way to satisfy us in a particular way.
That's what I got from it. Yes, Bhakta Ashish is going to give us something. Let's see what he's going to give us.
So in the purport of 329, text 10, it was mentioned that devotional service in the modes of ignorance, passion and goodness can be divided into 81 categories. So Prabhupada was explaining how 3 multiplied by 9 equals 27. So that makes sense because 3 is passion, goodness and ignorance multiplied by 9 is the different types of devotional services,
3.
which is 27.
9 times 3.
Is 27. But why do we multiply it with 3 again to make it 81? What's the other 3?
Because there's different permutations and combinations. You know, goodness, passion, ignorance, passion, goodness, ignorance. It's different degrees of each one. It's not just goodness, passion, and ignorance. It's mixtures of goodness, and actually it goes more than that. That's just the beginning. The modes of nature combine, like the colors, to create all the forms. Every single form in the material world is a combination of the modes of material nature. Just like you take, the 3 basic colors, blue, yellow, and red, or blue, white, and red. Well, blue, yellow, and red, and you mix those colors. An artist can mix those colors and create all the colors possible. Like in your inkjet printer, they give you a color ink tank. And it's got these 3 colors. And they mix together and they can make millions of colors. So like that, the 3 modes of nature, they keep combining together with the different types of devotional service. And they make unlimited quantities, unlimited varieties. But these are the basic ones. And so the basic characteristics of those different divisions of devotional service are being given in the purport. But that's just the beginning of the variety. Yes, Bhakti Matt.
We have a question online from Radhananda Devidasi.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Radhananda.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Could you please explain more or in a simple way about text 41, the last paragraph of the purport, the 4 principles of the Vaishnava philosophic, Suddha, Advaita, Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta, Dvaita. Thank you very much.
I don't have time. That's a very deep subject. It's a very intricate subject. The basic principle is that Advaita means everything is one, and Advaita means 2. So that means there's the soul and the living entity. They're 2, not 1. And then Vishishta Dvaita and others are just variations of the same thing, and they result in Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, which means simultaneously inconceivable oneness and difference. So those other 4 are components of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. And it isn't really necessary for us to analyze the differences, the details of the differences. It would take a book to do that. I've got neither the time, neither have we got the data on our phone to do it. We've only got 2 days left. So, if 26, 27, 3 days left, and we don't have so much data left, so we have to cut our sessions short. Not that I want to disappoint you. What you should do is go into the database and look up those words. And there are different purports in Srila Prabhupada's teachings which will explain the details to you. But I don't have time to go into them now in great depth, in great detail. Just know that the Advaita means without duality. The Dvaita means with duality. And Vishishtadvaita and Avishtadvaita, they are subtleties of the duality, which end in a Chintabheda Tattva, which is inconceivable, simultaneous difference, oneness and difference. And that's it. God is one with everything, and He is different from everything at the same time. Yes.
Reflection from Rati Manjari. She says, "Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Tonight had many important points. I'm increasingly realizing at intervals that the path of devotional service is such a complete package. You have to surrender to it, or you will get or remain. Sorry, lost my place. Entangled in the modes of nature. There really is no way around the need to perform devotional service, which is the constitutional position of the living entity. So devotional service is simultaneously the highest law as well as the highest nectar."
Yeah, thank you, Rati. That's very nice idea. And also, it's both the means and the ends. You can't get to the end any other way. So pure devotional service is the means to achieve love of Godhead, and it is simultaneously love of Godhead. And with that, I'm going to close tonight's sessions, Hare Krishna, and thank all of you for being here with us and staying in the game to the end, and for your reflections and support, actually, of your receptive ears, because there's a relationship between the tongue and the ears, and when there are ears that are receptive, it's easier for the tongue to wag, to vibrate the right sounds. And I'm a little bit regretful that I can't answer Radhananda's question so deeply tonight. It's a big, deep question, but I again repeat to her and anyone else who wants to know more detail about those terms, specific terms, that if you just enter those terms into the Veda base and then go to the hit list and read all the things that Srila Prabhupada says about those things, then he will fill in the details about what those terms mean, the divisions of the Vaishnava philosophy. Hare Krishna. Srila Kapila Dev ki jai. Pure devotional service ki jai. Mother Devahuti's questions ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. See you tomorrow night, same station, same place. Hare Krishna.